Your child may have already reached the stage in the maths curriculum where they can simplify fractions, and many children find that quite simple. Not super easy, but they find it quite simple. Certainly not the most difficult part of the maths curriculum. But one thing they don't do is connect simplifying fractions to simplifying divisions. And I know that because whenever I see children's practice papers and they get a word problem that might say how many 30 milliliter glasses can be filled from a container that holds 9 liters, they turn it into 9,000 divided by 30, which is good, but then they try a long division, you know, those bus stop division boxes that we've done at school, and they put the 30 on the outside and the 9,000 inside, and then they use their 30 times tables, which they could do, but there's no need. They could just use their 3 times tables instead. Just to remind you about simplifying fractions, in case it's been a while since you've done it, that would be like taking a fraction like 24 over 32 and writing it in its lowest terms. So both of those numbers can be divided by 2, but if we take a while to think about it, they could also both be divided by 8, which would be the highest common factor in both of those numbers. If we divide 24 by 8, we get 3, and if we divide 32 by 8, we'll get 4. And so 3/4 is the same as 24 out of 32. But divisions are the same thing. After all, fractions are a form of division. So what we can do with 9,030 is divide both numbers by the same amount so that they become easier numbers. And whenever your child gets a question where both numbers will end with a certain number of zeros, you can remove the same number of zeros from both numbers, because that would be dividing by 10 or dividing by 100 or even dividing by 1,000. Now the number 30 only has 1 0, so I can only get rid of 1 here. That means I can only get rid of 1 in that number. And I've got 900 divided by 3, which will give me the same answer as 9,000 divided by 30. And many children will be able to answer that division without even writing the bus stop method, and they'll get the answer of 300. But we can't use that method for 720 divided by 24. It's not likely that your child will see this, for example, in a transfer test, but it might come up. Or they may have decided to try to solve a certain maths problem using a long division like this when there was probably a simpler way. But there is still a simple way to divide numbers by 24. In fact, I can think of 2 ways. First of all, you can think of 2 numbers that multiply together to make 24. So if your child knows their tables, they'll know that 24 is the answer to 4 times 6. So they could pick a 4 and a 6, or they could pick a 3 and an 8. In fact, they could pick a 2 and a 12. And so the trick would be, take your 720 and first of all divide it by the 3, then take that answer and divide it by 8, and that will give you the answer to 720 divided by 24. They could pick the 8 first and then the 3, or they could use the 4 and the 6, or the 2 and the 12. Or another method again would be just to simplify these 2 numbers. They could cut both numbers in half, and that might mean writing small divisions by 2, or perhaps many children will be able to divide 720 by 2 mentally, and that will become 360, which means we must cut this number in half as well, and we've got a 12. So 360 divided by 12 will give us the same answer as 720 divided by 24. But if your child's confident enough to divide these numbers by 2 again, they'll end up with 180 divided by 6, which is certainly a simpler division. In fact, if 6 goes into 18 3 times, then 6 goes into 180 30 times. For more division advice, try the Target 7 workbook.